Hi, I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. Millions of people rely on our protein bars and hydration mixes to win their day. Turns out Thomas Keller, Michelin star chef of the French Laundry, is one of them. We've teamed up with Chef Keller to craft a bar and hydration mix that marry world-class flavor with exceptional nutrition. Our special edition salted caramel chip bar delivers all the decadence of a fine dining dessert plus protein minus sugar and carbs. And our zero sugar yuzu mango hydration mix packs an authentic citrusy punch and a mental boost from lion's mane and magnesium. The best part? 10% of sales go directly to Chef Keller's nonprofit that supports aspiring young chefs. Great taste, great nutrition, great mission. Total no-brainer.
Go to IQBar.com today and enter promo code KELLER20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. That's IQBAR.com, promo code KELLER20.
We broke records yesterday here in the region, and the heat continues with really not much end in sight. It's going to cool down a bit towards the end of the week, but not significantly, and no significant rain either. So that means that this drought condition continues. An East Coast drought that's been fueling wildfires is also drying up farmers' fields, and as homeowners scramble to refill empty wells. Farmers in Nova Scotia are describing the situation as unlike as any they can recall in recent memory. As an average, rainfalls were down between 90 and 110 millimeters over the past 2 months. A meteorologist with Environment Canada, Brian Proctor, says this is among the driest summers on record. In Newfoundland's Avalon Peninsula, where wildfires have burned homes and forced hundreds of people from their homes, the total rainfall in July was 50 millimeters, half of normal levels, rather. So it's serious conditions, folks. And in Newfoundland, of course, there's lots of evacuations underway and lots of concern and trepidation. Wildfires, of course, burning in New Brunswick. And everybody is got their fingers crossed and holding their breath here in Nova Scotia that we can avoid this. But It'll take some luck, folks. It's dire conditions and unprecedented, I guess, as they say. We'll talk about this later on in the show. We'll open the phone lines and we'll of course get your take on all of this and the travel ban and the forest ban. And I'll talk about this in just a couple of moments with our first guest. But one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is with the woods ban, have you changed your mind on this? The travel ban, the woods ban, whatever we're calling it. Have you changed your mind? Have you perhaps at one point when it was first rolled out last week been against it and now perhaps for it, or conversely the opposite? Or were you for it and now against it? Or what are your thoughts on this? And does the level of threat and what's happening in other provinces impact your opinion as you see fires out of control in Newfoundland and New Brunswick? Does this perhaps motivate you to feel a certain way or sway your opinion on this or not? Or are you embedded and entrenched in the way that you feel about it and want to get your take on it? Also, the Minister of Municipal Affairs has said no to Halifax's updated regional plan. The regional plan is a kind of blueprint for the municipality, focusing on growth over the coming years. Since 2020, the city has been working on updating its 2014 plan, including years of public engagement. But in a letter to the municipality, Municipal Affairs Minister John Lohr says the 2025 regional plan doesn't go far enough to help alleviate the housing crisis. So again, this is another example or another instance in which the Houston government has decided it's necessary to intervene in HRM business. Another example, along with bike lane debates and Morris Street decision, of course, and strong mayor powers. Is this overreach or necessary? And does this hurt Council's reputation and brand? We had Tony Mancini recently here in studio, visibly and noticeably upset by a lot of this stuff, and said that he feels that the brand of HRM Council has been hurt. as a result of a lot of this. And do you agree with that? And perhaps you think that it's necessary and applaud the provincial government for doing this and getting involved in municipal issues. Or perhaps you feel that it's overreach and an example of the Houston government getting involved when they should not. What is your take on that? We'll open the phone lines between 11 and 12 and get your take on that. By the way, Rob Thacker is back today with the Science File, so we'll do the Science Files between noon and 1, taking your science-related questions, of course, with Rob Thacker. We'll, of course, talk to Rob about a number of things, including the ongoing drought and the fire situation, and get his take on that. And climate change, of course, is always something that we can discuss and usually comes up when we have these types of conditions. So thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandenes as well on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. All right, so we know that there's lots of debate over this travel ban and lots to talk about when it comes to this. John Dehaas is the counsel with the Canadian Constitution Foundation and joins us to talk about all this. Josh Dehaas. Josh, thanks for joining the show.
Happy to be here.
All right, tell us about the Canadian Constitution Foundation, first of all. What do you guys do?
So we're a legal charity, and our job is to defend rights and freedoms. We do this through public education. We have courses on our website. We talk to media and try to help people understand the limits on their constitutional rights and what rights they have. And when necessary, we will take governments to court to challenge measures that we think violate constitutional rights. It's not always popular, but for us, it's really important to defend those rights and freedoms.
And when you've done so, what's your track record been?
It's pretty good. Our biggest case that we ever took on was a challenge to the Emergencies Act invocation in Ottawa. And we were not defending the trucker protests, but what we were doing was saying that this particular situation was not a national emergency in the sense that they should have, suspended people's right to protest and frozen people's bank accounts. And we won in federal court. So that's probably the most famous case that we've ever done is defending people's rights and freedoms against the illegal invocation of the Emergencies Act.
Okay, and tell us about your stance or what you're doing here when it comes to Nova Scotia and the travel ban.
Yeah, so to be really very clear, we have no issue with evidence-based restrictions on people's movement. People do have a constitutional right to movement, to a freedom to roam, it's called, and that's protected under Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What we have an issue with is that we think the travel ban is overbroad and it just goes too far in restricting people's freedom of movement. So, there's no problem with fire bans in a time when it's, dry and there's wildfire threat in Nova Scotia. There's no problem with banning even things like using ATVs in the forest, which can cause forest fire. But when you start to say, people can't, for potentially months on end, use trails in Halifax to get to work where there's no fire risk from just walking on the trail, or they can't, go fishing, or they can't go onto a rural property with a family member and visit them and go into the woods bird watching. We're saying that's going too far, and those things are not constitutional in our view and are not permitted under the Forests Act. Okay, so what about the argument that would suggest that those activities do cause a risk? Is it subjective? Does it come down to opinion, or what? How can we weigh that? Yeah, so I think it's a matter of proportionality, right? So when you're talking about limiting people's rights, you can do that as a government, but it has to be proportionate. So, the risk of something like having a campfire ban, if you look at statistics from Nova Scotia government's own website, the leading causes of forest fire in the province are arson and campfires. And then there's also things like, people burning on their rural property to, just burning vegetation, things like that, as well as ATVs. So all those things, they pose a serious enough risk based on evidence that they should be banned. But simply walking down the trail is not going to cause a risk. And people will say, well, it does cause a risk because they're stupid people. They might throw a cigarette or they might drop a water bottle and that could reflect the sun and cause a fire. To us, those risks are so so small that they can't possibly be proportional to keeping 1 million people out of their forests and trails and forests on private property, potentially up to October 15th, and, maybe doing this every year since there's a lot of dry summer seasons now. So it's all about proportionality. And this particular restriction, this ban, it just goes too far. There's also the fines. The fines are extremely punitive this time. You've had these fire bans in the past, but they've been put in place for very short times, or they've been limited to particular parts of the forest, or they've had very low fines associated with. And this time it's punitive. It's zero tolerance, and that can't be right. A $25,000 fine for walking down a trail can't be right.
Are you surprised that, or perhaps what are your thoughts on the fact that these types of measures have not been implemented outside of Atlantic Canada?
So I had an interesting discussion the other day with a journalist named Stephen Marr, and he says that you have a different culture in Nova Scotia, according to him, where people are more willing to trust the government and to want to take care of their neighbors by doing what the government says. So it might have to do with just the particular culture. It might also have to do with the fact that I don't think Nova Scotia has as many wildfires or as much experience with them as some of the other provinces. I'm here in Ontario. We have wildfires all the time, and it's considered just unfortunately a part of life and a risk that happens. And so I think Nova Scotia, it's more recent that these things have been happening. And obviously there was a big wildfire in 2023, which was awful for people, right? A lot of people were out of their homes or lost homes in that wildfire. So it might be just part of the current Nova Scotia psyche right now that people were more willing to accept the more extreme measure until they thought about it. And because a lot of people have been changing their minds on this. A lot of people initially said kind of, well, we'll do it. If we have to do it, we have to do it. And then people said, wait a minute, does this make sense? Is this going too far, banning all woods activity all the way to October?
Okay, what about when I hear from people who say those opposed this are the same people who are anti-vaxxers or kind of lump people into categories like that? What's your response to that?
I think it's really unfortunate that people are lumping everybody into the same categories. I think there are people that are more skeptical of government naturally for whatever reason, and then there are people that are more willing to trust the government. But we've had thousands of people sign a petition, and we're hearing from people all the time about how they think this travel ban goes too far, and they're not the usual suspects, I have to say. So they're first of all, nobody I've spoken to, and I'm getting all kinds of letters and emails, nobody I've spoken to says that they have any issue with campfire bans, because campfire bans are a big risk or serious punishment for people that do break those rules. But a lot of people are saying, for example, I take my kids to camp in a bike with a compartment on the back, and now I have to do that on the road because there's no trail and I don't have other means of transportation. Or, I own a small business where I take people on foraging hikes in the forest, and now my business is completely shut down, even though we don't have a layer with us. We don't have any metal. We're just walking in the forest, right? So it's affecting lots of people in different ways. And it's not just sort of the usual suspects who are very, very concerned about government overreach. It's, there's some conspiracy theories going on about this, which I certainly personally don't subscribe to. I just think this is an overreach. It's not some grand conspiracy, but it's all sorts of people that are saying this goes too far and agreeing with us.
Okay, so what would it take for you to actually become litigious about this, actually take this to court?
Well, we're working on it. So we already think this is something that deserves to be challenged, in particular, just because we don't think that the act itself was ever meant to do a province-wide ban that goes on this long and that interferes with people's rights in this way. So we're in touch with local counsel. We don't normally jet in there from Toronto or Calgary or wherever our lawyers happen to be based and start suing people, we like to hire local counsel. So we're working on it.
Okay, so what type of time frame and how do you pay for this?
So we are a charity, like I said. So if people go on our website, the ccf.ca, they can donate to us if they want to help challenge this and have a court weigh in on whether or not this is constitutional or follow the statute. And if people don't want to donate but they want to support us, there's a petition on our website, the ccf.ca, that they can sign. And we're already at several thousand signatures that we'll send to the Premier at some point to say, hey, Premier, we understand that there's serious forest fire risk, but we don't think that this total ban on travel is acceptable.
Okay, Josh, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. We'll follow up.
Thanks so much, Todd.
All right, take care. Josh Dehaas, Counsel with the Canadian Constitution Foundation. The support for the Liberals in Carney unchanged despite no trade deal with the U.S. We'll talk federal politics with Lori Turnbull when we come back. All right, joining us for a chat is Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Lori, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, as always.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so when it comes to federal politics right now, I mean, not a lot going on and a lot of other things happening to divert people's attention away. So when it comes to a poll in the dog days of summer, probably not a lot of attention given to this type of thing, I would think, right?
Not as much, I think, as, if it's in the middle of the fall and, Parliament is sitting and you're seeing, bills up all the time. I think now there's a little bit of a relaxation in terms of people's attention to politics. However, I think the situation with the United States and people waiting to see what's going to happen from those negotiations, obviously there's, that August 1st day came and went and the tariffs came and we weren't able to get a deal. And, so I think there's probably a bit more eyes on it than in a typical summer. But that said, I think the Prime Minister is taking some time this week, so it's a little bit quiet.
Okay. That said, the Advocates data poll that we're talking about conducted in the days following the passage of the self-imposed August 1st deadline with Donald Trump show the Liberals remain strong despite signs that the government isn't doing enough when it comes to the stagnant economy and affordability issues. 44% of respondents say Trump and his chaotic tariff initiative continue to be of concern. The rising cost of living is far and away top of mind for Canadians, 62% citing that as the dominant issue facing the country. So kind of this would be expected, I think, at this stage of a government which almost always has a honeymoon kind of halo effect. Not much surprise here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of trust in Mark Carney that he's the person to either be able to deal with Trump or deal with the aftermath and the economic uncertainty in the event that we don't get a deal. And I think that trust in him continues. I think that the more Trump acts out and, writes his letters and sends them to all these people and continues to insist that there's a fentanyl crisis in terms of fentanyl coming from Canada to the U.S., like those sorts of things, I think, expose Trump's demeanor and his mindset. And I think it ends up affording Carney some latitude in terms of, and people's expectations with respect to being able to get a deal with this guy. Like, I think no one really expects that Mark Carney's going to be able to go and somehow be a real Trump whisperer, right? Like, that's not the job. But I think there's a lot of promise with the nation building projects. I think people are, there were a couple of surveys this week too to indicate people are quite interested to see some progress on those kinds of projects. People are enthusiastic about maybe putting together some pieces that are actually going to help the economy no matter what Trump does. And so I think that's the piece that could link to the questions around affordability. Because if people are really thinking about the affordability crisis, it's not necessarily as like, listen, maybe we get a deal with Trump, maybe we don't, whatever. We need to fix that, right? We need to fix what people are dealing with in terms of their own economic situation. And so I think that's where the Prime Minister could have a bit of an issue sooner rather than later, particularly if he expects, like, he's going to have a budget in the fall. And if that's all about cuts and it's all about belt tightening and we've got to sort this out and people are still feeling that crunch, his capital could start to drain at that point.
And why is it, though, that austerity, to use that term, is so unpopular? You would think that people would recognize that spending is. I mean, there was a time, I guess, when fiscal prudence and belt tightening was popular, depending on obviously the political winds and what was going on. But why is that so toxic now?
Well, I mean, I think there's still appetite for cuts if they're in the right places. Like anything to do with government waste, any suggestion that government is maybe spending money on things it doesn't need to be spending money on, people I think are happy enough to see those sorts of things cut. I saw another poll yesterday saying that more than half of Canadians are happy to have the public service cut. And again, it's not a good, people don't want to have the programs cut that they rely on. But if there's a sense in our head sometimes that government spending all kinds of money on things that we don't really need, it's not helping us, then yes, cut that stuff. If the public service is too big in terms of its size, cut that stuff. But when it comes to cutting things that are going to make it harder for people to make ends meet, people don't want to see that, right? Especially when we've been in this cost of living crisis for a while. If there's a sense that government eliminating waste, then fine. But if there's a sense that government is taking its own economic problems and passing them down to the people, then I think, yeah, there's not a whole lot of patience for that.
You think military spending and making cuts in order to make way for military spending, is that a political win?
Well, I mean, I think it's maybe. Like, I think this is a kind of a complicated one because I think actually part of what Prime Minister Carney is doing is seeing increases in military spending. It's not just about defense, although it is about that. And it's not just about, encouraging, like giving fairer salaries in the military and encouraging people to get involved. It's about that, but it's not entirely about that. I think he also sees investment in defense capacity and infrastructure as being a much bigger piece of, kind of taking Canada up a notch in terms of where we are sitting in the world. I think he sees this as a huge part of the economic growth plan because investing in this kind of infrastructure is going to make us, more capable of defending ourselves, more capable of being part of the Rearm Europe project. But also we're talking about projects like, just basic infrastructure, roads, technology. This is all going to lead to jobs. And so I think this is part of his, it's not just defense. Like this is a key part of his economic plan. But the key is, though, how long is this going to take? If, it all kind of sounds great, and I think he's kind of trying to take down that kind of dichotomy we have in our head sometimes. Are we going to spend a whole lot of money on defense, or are we going to spend a whole lot of money on healthcare and programs and more domestic things? I think what he's trying to say is, no, it's all part of the same picture. But how long will that take? How long will it be before these things produce jobs and economic growth and start to address the affordability crisis?
The military spending, I mean, that a lot of it, or not a lot of it, but certainly part of it is to appease Donald Trump, is it not, as well, though?
I mean, I think partly that. I think, getting to the point where we can say we're meeting that NATO requirement, right? At first it was 2%, and now it's kind of moving towards 5%, with 3.5% of it on defense, and then the other can be towards more like larger infrastructural projects that would have civilian relevance as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's partly that. But the more this goes on, it doesn't really seem like we are doing things to move closer to Trump's demands. It looks like we're diversifying that. Everything that Carney is saying in terms of Canada's place in the world, the situation in Gaza, we are aligning ourselves with our European partners, not with Trump.
Right, but I think if not for Trump's push when it comes to GDP and NATO spending and percentages, it wouldn't be happening, or at least not certainly to the degree that it is. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I don't know about that. I don't feel like this is Trump's push anymore. I think that it probably started out like that. Like it certainly seemed like when the former Prime Minister Trudeau said that we were going to meet that 2% target by 2032. That seemed like Canada was kind of dragging and kicking and screaming and, yeah, okay, we'll meet it, but we're not doing it until 2032 because clearly if that's the case, that's not really a priority, right? Like he was saying, look, we'll do it. And I think when Trudeau said it, it was him trying to appease Trump so that he would stop breathing down our necks and we'd look somehow NATO compliant. I don't get the same feeling at all now. I feel like the shift toward a bigger defense agenda in Canada is actually not so much to comply with Trump, but to lessen our dependence on him.
Okay, and of course, Pierre Poilievre in the by-election going on. This is going to be, obviously, he's going to win it. Does it matter what people talk about? He should get to that same percent that the person who had the seat had. Does that really matter? Are people going to actually pay attention to that, or is that kind of overplayed?
In my view, and I think I'm offside a lot of people on this, but I think it's overplayed. I don't think it makes that much difference. I mean, obviously, if he gets by, like it's a squeaker, I mean, that wouldn't be good. But ultimately, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that at the end of the day, he'll win. And if he wins, it doesn't really matter how much he won by. There will be some people in the conservative movement who are thinking about Poilievre's leadership, Poilievre's future, and anyone who wants to see him move along will take, a squeaker win, right? Or it was not going to be a squeaker, but like Damien Carrick in that riding got like 83%. If Poilievre gets like 65, people in the conservative movement are going to look at that and say, he's costing us points, right? Like he's costing us, like he should have gotten more like 80% and he didn't. Look, that figure dropped a lot. Even when Aaron O'Toole in the 2021 election, even though his efforts managed to win the Conservatives the popular vote, and he certainly didn't do badly in that election, a lot of the ridings where people lost, they used to win by 70%, and this time they won by 58%, they were really irritated at him. And so I think where the push might be for Poilievre is Conservatives who get nervous if it looks like he doesn't have the hold that he should, but the broader public, they're not going to, people aren't going to lose any sleep over that.
Absolutely not. Okay, Lori, appreciate it. Thanks so much. Great as always.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin, independent MLA, says that the regional transportation plan is off point. We'll talk about this when we come back.
Hi, I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. Millions of people rely on our protein bars and hydration mixes to win their day. Turns out Thomas Keller, Michelin star chef of the French Laundry, is one of them. We've teamed up with Chef Keller to craft a bar and hydration mix that marry world-class flavor with exceptional nutrition. Our special edition salted caramel chip bar delivers all the decadence of a fine dining dessert plus protein minus sugar and carbs. And our zero-sugar yuzu mango hydration mix packs an authentic citrusy punch and a mental boost from lion's mane and magnesium. The best part? 10% of sales go directly to Chef Keller's nonprofit that supports aspiring young chefs. Great taste, great nutrition, great mission. Total no-brainer.
Go to IQBar.com today and enter promo code Keller20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. That's IQBAR.com, promo code Keller20.
The Nova Scotia government's newly released regional transportation plan has been framed as a visionary roadmap for the next 20 years, but according to Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin, Cumberland North independent MLA, the plan fails to deliver for most of the province, including the entrance and gateway into Nova Scotia. Cumberland County, Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time, of course.
Thank you so much, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell us about this regional transportation plan. What does it include?
Well, it looks like it includes HRM and 100 kilometers outside of HRM, but it's it's called a province-wide vision, but it sadly doesn't include the entire province. I am the actual only opposition MLA in rural Nova Scotia, so I guess that's why we're not hearing other people speak up about it. The government MLAs are not allowed to say anything, but the reality is most of Nova Scotia was left out of this plan. So it is far from a province-wide vision and plan.
Okay, so tell us about some of your primary concerns.
Well, I think that the entire province needs to be considered. We need to make sure that rural Nova Scotia is part of what the government is investing in. Infrastructure is important throughout all of Nova Scotia, including other entry points to the province. Of course, I represent the people of Cumberland, which includes the only land entry into Nova Scotia, the corridor to the province, the gateway to the province, of course, through the Chignecto Isthmus. But there's other entry points too, Todd, as well, in Digby and Yarmouth, and those should be included in the province-wide plan as well for transportation and strengthening transportation for our province. Our population is growing. We need to make sure that our road systems and our infrastructure that we have and that we have in the future take into consideration all of Nova Scotia and ensure that we're not actually making an urban-rural divide worse, but rather strengthening and unifying all the people so that all Nova Scotians feel a part of our beautiful province. And right now, when the province puts out a plan that excludes basically half of the people and saying it's a province-wide plan, it's kind of insulting.
Okay, do you think that perhaps it could have been like a plan which had a section in it dedicated to HRM and the 100-kilometer radius, and then also how that's integrated with the rest of the province? Might that have made sense?
Yeah, I think, but that's not what it was called, right? So, what I have called on the government to do is to develop a plan that links all of Nova Scotia, develop a rural transportation strategy that includes this plan that they have, but also all of Nova Scotia, and recognizing all the entry points, including ours up in Cumberland County. And, in my press release, Todd, I mentioned the Cobequid Pass. That's been a bone of contention for the people I represent for 3 decades. And we did see a change for the people of Nova Scotia and the people I represent once the Houston government came in. Premier Houston had supported a bill that I had tabled, which was to remove the tolls for Nova Scotians and for business, for commercial trucks. And for the people of Cumberland, of course, we had to pay a toll to get to the rest of the province for 26 years. People are still bitter about that, Todd. They paid money to travel on provincial highways when other people in the province didn't have to. If someone went to Halifax from Yarmouth for a medical appointment, they didn't have to pay an extra tax or a toll. Or if someone came from Sydney, Cape Breton to Halifax for a medical appointment, they didn't have to pay an extra tax or a toll. But the people of Cumberland did, and they had to do that for 26 years. And our businesses that transported lobster or lumber or manufactured goods to the airport or to the port had to pay an extra fee to export those goods, where other taxpayers in Nova Scotia didn't. So my message to the Premier and to this government is some of that money that our taxpayers paid for 26 years in the form of a toll on the Cobequid Pass should be reinvested back into Cumberland County, and it's for the benefit of all Nova Scotians because we are the gateway. We are the entrance to Nova Scotia. Just last year, if you look at the financials for the Western Alignment Corporation, there was over $77 million sitting there in assets, financial assets. And, I'd like to see that money put back into the roads and the bridges, which are literally falling apart up in our area of the woods. And I think it's similar throughout all of rural Nova Scotia. So it's, when I saw this regional plan, it kind of, it triggered for a lot of people in rural Nova Scotia because they felt left out, and we're seeing big needs in our area for road infrastructure.
How transparent is it when it comes to money and where it goes and how it's spent in transportation and the planning of it and what goes behind it? How transparent or not is that whole process? Well,
here in Nova Scotia, all department decisions, spending decisions, are supposed to be nonpartisan. That's actually law. There's a conflict of interest piece of legislation that states departments cannot make spending decisions based on partisan decisions. However, I think it's pretty evident from most that this government is very partisan. And up in our area of the woods, we've seen very little asphalt laid down, and we're seeing big investments in areas where there are PC MLAs. It's not always the case, and actually this topic is an example where it's not the case, because most of the PCMLAs are in rural Nova Scotia, yet they weren't included in this regional transportation plan. But we definitely can see an improvement with transparency and accountability when it comes to government spending. I'd love to see more of that. As you know, the Auditor General has spoke about this several times, and there's a ton of money being spent. I believe it's over 10% of our provincial monies are being spent outside of the budgetary process and with little to no government oversight. So I guess the answer to your question is I think all taxpayers deserve to know where the money is being spent and to see better transparency and accountability for that.
Okay, you mentioned that MLAs, PCMLAs, are not in a position where they can speak up. Why is that? Just simply because of partisan politics and party whip, or because they could ostensibly, potentially, speak up? Could they not?
Well, it comes down to leadership styles, and in politics, there's different leadership styles. I think we all know the style that we have right now here in the province doesn't allow for real strong democratic representation, right? There's you talk to people that work inside of government departments, they will tell you, behind the scenes that the centralization of power is stronger than they've ever seen it before. Decisions are not made even within government departments. Their decisions are coming from the Premier's office. So that's a real control. It's a real control style type of leadership. So MLAs will tell you, off the record, they're not allowed to speak up. They're not allowed to say anything. And if they do, then they jeopardize losing their cabinet position. Or, of course, the Premier has given every backbencher in the PC party a ministerial position with extra pay. So that's also an incentive for them if they want to keep their higher wage than an opposition MLA or what a backbencher would normally get. They need to keep their mouth closed and go along with what they're being told. So that's just the reality of the culture right now that we have.
Oh, back to transportation. You've advocated in the past for rail. Do you still think that rail could have a bigger role in helping solve some of the bigger challenges here in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in this. This was an idea that was brought to me from someone who is an expert in this field, and it certainly caught my eye. And I think as innovation and technology advances, we should be looking at the costs of these things. We're seeing it developed certainly in other countries in the world. And as our population increases, we need to be looking to be, I guess, proactive, and instead of trying to respond reactively to the population increases, what transportation systems can we be putting in place that will help alleviate the pressure points and also, be aiding our economy and helping our labor force to move to where they need to go to work. So I think it's worth exploring. And of course, it's always looking at what is cost benefit analysis and what would be the long-term impact on our economy.
Well, Elizabeth, always a great chat. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Okay. Good to talk to you too.
All right. Take care. Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin, an independent MLA for the riding of Cumberland North. A new campaign called Stop the Water Hike has been launched to mobilize Halifax Regional Municipality residents to oppose Halifax Water's proposed 36.6% rate hike. We'll discuss this when we come back.
X.
A new public campaign called Stop the Water Hike has been launched to mobilize Halifax Regional Municipality residents to oppose Halifax Water's proposed 36.6% rate hike. Kevin Russell, Executive Director of Rental Housing Providers Nova Scotia, joins us to talk about this. Kevin, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Todd, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, so tell us more about this initiative, this campaign.
Well, Todd, I mean, Halifax Water is proposing a 36.6% rate increase, and this is unaffordable and harmful. And we're inviting everybody to visit www.stoptherent.hikes.ca, sign up and send a message to Halifax Water, the regulator, and City Hall. You know, nobody can afford a 36.6% increase water rate hike. It will drive up utility bills, rents, and costs for businesses. And water is essential, not a luxury. And Halifax Water needs to focus on keeping it affordable. And so we're asking the residents to go to stoptherentehikes.ca and speak out before the September 2nd deadline.
All right, and why is Halifax Water saying they need this? They have a big multi-million-dollar hole they have to fill. That's what's going on here, is it?
Well, Todd, they're blaming it. Or pointing to the direction that they have a major need to overhaul their infrastructure, and so they're saying this is what they need to be able to do this. But you know, if you look across the country at other water utilities, they're facing the same conditions that Halifax Water is. They all have aging infrastructure that needs to be overhauled, but they're not coming to the table with 36.6% rate increase. So what we're saying, water must be affordable. It's not a luxury.
Okay, so 36.6% rate increase for a property owner, that would have to get passed on to, I shouldn't say have to, but I would think it would likely get passed on to renters. But renters just see it as a increase in rent. So your members, your concern would get blamed for this, correct?
Well, we seem to get blamed for anything that government does that drives up costs, whether it's water or utilities or property taxes and assessment. And so you're right. We will end up probably shouldering the blame, but we should point to the direction where the blame really lies, and it relies on the government plus the utilities, and that is the reason rents end up going up. Housing affordability is a big issue in Halifax, as it is in other centers, and this is just another example where, organizations talk about housing affordability and then are responsible for causing the rent increases.
All right, so how much would rent potentially go up for people? What might this look like in people's rents? I know it would probably depend on the building and how much they're paying anyway, but what type of increase would they be looking at? Well,
there is a bit of good news. We're seeing from the RBC economists that rents are actually decreasing in Halifax. They're down, but they're down about 7%. But this could eventually outweigh any reduction in rent that's happening in Halifax right now because of the size of the increase.
Okay, so when it comes to your thoughts on what Halifax Water might do about this, the Nova Scotia Regular and Appeals Board, they have approved an extra week for public feedback on this. So what are your thoughts on the regulator and what it would likely do or not do here?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I could tell you. So, it's going to be up to the evidence that's provided, plus the fact of the impact of the public showing their displeasure and dissatisfaction with Halifax Water and the regulator. So it's extremely important that residents, not only renters, but residents, homeowners, businesses, sign up for this campaign and let them know their displeasure with what's taking place. People often want to speak out on these issues, but they're too busy and to write a letter or send an email. And they may not even know where to send it. And so we're just making it easy by giving them a simple one-stop platform to lodge their complaints and express their dissatisfaction in just a few clicks.
All right, and look, obviously Nova Scotia, or rather the utility, Halifax Water, I should say, probably isn't going to back down from this. So it really falls on the regulator and the appeals board to, if it's going to be denied, that's where it's going to happen, obviously. Halifax Water is going to have some epiphany moment and suddenly say, you know what, you're right, we don't need this increase, right? That's not going to happen.
Well, that's correct. But don't forget, Halifax Water is owned by HRM. It's a monopoly. And Counsel and the regulator must protect the public from excessive hikes. I mean, no one can afford this hike at 36.6%. It's harmful.
All right. So, do you have some expectation that some members of council might voice an opinion here?
Well, we would hope so. I mean, we hope they get the message from the residents that through this campaign that they're not happy and the reasons why they're not happy with the increase. And the number one reason, it affects affordability. It's going to affect utility bills, and it's also going to affect the cost of goods and services, and that's ultimately paid by the residents of this city.
It hasn't happened yet, though. I don't know. I can recollect a councillor speaking out directly against this type of thing. Do you have any recollection of any councillors doing that?
I think they've been too busy with bike lanes, Todd. I mean, you know, we talk about housing affordability, and you look across this country at every municipality, the number one issue is housing affordability. But you get to Halifax, and the number one issue is bike lanes. And this is very problematic, and I believe councillors should be ashamed of themselves for not stepping up and fixing the affordable housing issue that Halifax is experiencing.
Okay, Kevin, appreciate your time. Again, a reminder to remind people where they can go if they want to let their voice be heard in this campaign. Just give everybody a reminder.
Yeah, it's stoptheratehikes.ca.
Stoptheratehike.ca. Simple as that. Okay, Kevin, appreciate it. Thank you.
Simple as that.
All right.
For the time,
all right, take care.
Take
Kevin
care.
Russell, Executive Director of the Rental Housing Providers of Nova Scotia. What are your thoughts on this, folks, or anything else you've got in your mind? Are you sick, sore, and tired of being constantly told that you have to pay more for everything, including power rates, including water rates, and the regulator, the Nova Scotia regulator and appeals board? Do you have any faith that they have your back, or that they have any? Do you have any confidence in interveners like this? And what are your thoughts on this, folks? The cost of living and things like this, a water rate increase of 36.6%. That is massive, folks. That's huge. And again, the regulator will likely just approve it despite this public effort. If I were to be a betting man, which I'm not, I would bet that they will greenlight this. What are your thoughts on this, or whatever else you've got in your mind? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. You can discuss that, or the Woods ban, of course. Have you changed your mind on this woods and travel ban? Have you are you somebody who might have opposed it initially but now are for it, or conversely, were you for it and now against it? And does the threat and what's happening in other provinces impact your opinion as we see wildfires burning out of control and a state of emergency in Newfoundland, of course, with evacuations going on in that province in 3 or 4 different locations, including St. John's? Does that impact how you feel about all this? 902-405-6000, an open hour when we come back.
Hi, I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. Millions of people rely on our protein bars and hydration mixes to win their day. Turns out Thomas Keller, Michelin star chef of the French Laundry, is one of them. We've teamed up with Chef Keller to craft a bar and hydration mix that marry world-class flavor with exceptional nutrition. Our special edition salted caramel chip bar delivers all the decadence of a fine dining dessert plus protein minus sugar and carbs. And our zero-sugar yuzu mango hydration mix packs an authentic citrusy punch and a mental boost from lion's mane and magnesium. The best part? 10% of sales go directly to Chef Keller's nonprofit that supports aspiring young chefs. Great taste, great nutrition, great mission. Total no-brainer.
Go to iqbar.com today and enter promo code KELLER20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. That's iqbar.com, promo code KELLER20.
All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us, of course, is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What would you like to talk about today? Again, it's about a week now, a little less than a week, since we've had this travel ban, this woods ban imposed upon us here in Nova Scotia. And in that week, there's been a lot of conversation about it and a lot of opposition and look, a lot of people who support it as well. But like anything, whenever you implement something like this, you have to expect that it's going to be controversial, and I'm sure that the government had no expectations that it would not be. So what are your thoughts on it? Has your opinion perhaps changed? Have you been on the fence about this, and perhaps you've now decided where you fall on it? Are you still on the fence about it, or have you maybe when it was initially rolled out, were you opposed to it, and as time has gone on, as a few days have passed, and you see what's happening in other provinces, including in New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Labrador, that has that changed your mind for the necessity of this ban, or are you dead set against it, regardless of conditions and regardless of the threat? Earlier in the show, I had the representative for the Canadian Constitution Foundation, and they are considering and they are looking at a constitutional challenge and legal action here in Nova Scotia. What are your thoughts on that, folks? What are your thoughts on this in general? It's been, as mentioned, about a week now. Has your opinion changed or not? Also, the Municipal of Municipal Affairs has said no to Halifax's updated regional plan. This plan is kind of a blueprint for the municipality, focusing on growth over the coming years. Since 2020, the city has been working on updating its plan, including years of public engagement. But in a letter to the Municipal Affairs Minister John Lohr says the 2025 plan doesn't go far enough to help alleviate the housing crisis. So this is, again, another example in which the provincial government has expressed its displeasure, or it is certainly not given approval to what Counsel is doing here. Also, the Houston government has gotten involved in intervening in bike lanes and of course, in Morris Street and making Morris Street a one-way, saying that they will basically, they would have opposed that plan if the municipality would have moved forward with it. They are not now, but only because of the province basically telling them that you can, if you don't, we won't allow it anyway. So does this hurt Council's reputation and the brand of Council, HRM Council? What are your thoughts on this? And do you think that the Houston government should be getting involved and intervening in HRM's business to this degree? And strong mayor powers, of course, is something that they've talked a lot about and something that is coming. 902-405-6000. So whatever that or whatever else you've got in your mind. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's go to the phones. Carolyn, hello.
Good morning, Todd. I hope you are well.
Yep.
Great. Before I get into my little speech here that I wrote, I just want to say that I disagree with the gentleman you had on earlier that was speaking against our widespread park ban, walking in the park. He said that smokers pose a low risk. Well, I can tell you from experience, because I used to walk and bike in our trails often, and I see a lot of discarded cigarette butts. So that's all I'll say on that. Okay, so my little speech is about an email I sent you may have seen, about some upcoming proposed high production forestry scheduled to take place in the proposed Ingram River Wilderness area. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at clear cutting 366 football fields, which is a lot. And the government is legally required to protect 330,000 hectares of lands and waters within the next 5 years. And this area is recognized as a very significant area to protect. It has the oldest documented forest in the Maritimes. One tree is 535 years old, and it also is one of the last core habitat for the endangered moose. So cutting that area could definitely mean the end of the moose population, the mainland moose. And what really gets me is that, we're in the midst of a drought. There's fires burning all over the country. And if it is indeed true that CO2 emissions are responsible for some of this, well, trees retain CO2. So wouldn't it make sense to retain as many trees as we can instead of cutting, we're cutting lots of trees. Mm-hmm. I'll just leave it at that. So I just don't think this is a good idea, and I'm not the only one. So if people want more information, there's a website. It's called the healthyforestcoalition.ca, and tomorrow night, Wednesday, August 13th, from 6:30 to 8:30, there's going to be a public information meeting at the Tantallon Public Library. So if anyone like me is concerned, I would urge people to attend or check out the website. And that's it, Todd.
Okay,
Thanks
Carol.
for letting me have my little speech.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Carol, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. Actually, what I'm calling about is the fire ban and the woods ban.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a son who works for Department of Natural Resources. And I just wanted to make people aware of the fact that between natural resources and the volunteer firemen, most of those gentlemen, I would say 85 to 90% of them, love the woods, love this province, love the wildlife, and they don't like the fact that they can't go into the woods either. But they remember fighting the fires in Shelburne and in Tantallon and don't want to see volunteers putting their lives at risk so that people can go and play in the woods. That's basically what I have to say about that. I hear very little about the fact that we need to protect those volunteers. Mm-hmm. I mean, they give up their time and their jobs and everything else to look after the forest, and I think we have to take on the same responsibility. And what I'd say to people who don't think it's fair is volunteer as a fireman, and then we'll discuss it.
Well, Carol,
so that's all I have to say.
Well, Carol, you say kind of flippantly play in the woods, though it's. I think for some people it goes a little
flippantly.
Well, okay, but does it goes a little beyond just simply somebody wanting to recreate and go in the woods. I mean, a lot of people use trails which connect people in communities in HRM. And there are some people out there whose businesses rely on people being able to fish, and so it does go beyond just simple recreation and kind of a whim for some people. Carol, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, like I said, I think we have a responsibility to protect our population, and the population that it takes to fight these forest fires, I think people are just not giving enough consideration to.
Well, how much Carol, what about those who say that there's no data which would support that not allowing people to bike in a trail or walk in a trail like Long Lake or wherever, that there's no data which would back that up? What's your response to that that's a threat?
Well, my response to that would be the same as your previous caller. You walk the trails and you certainly see your share of cigarette butts. And I think that's going to be a big factor, people throwing them out the window of their cars on the highways. I think there is a risk. Where there's people, there's a risk.
All right, so why not tell people you're not allowed to smoke on trails?
Well, because I think people don't listen.
Well, are people listening to this then? To this travel ban?
No, I guess not.
I mean, like.
Well, so I would think most people are.
Yeah.
And hopefully some that aren't will be ticketed. We don't have the enforcement personnel to really enforce it.
But Carol, this smoking and cigarette butts thing comes up. It seems to me the most frequent issue that people raise or concern that could be the reason why a fire would start is a cigarette butt. And if that's the case, then say we're going to have a $50,000 fine for anybody caught smoking in a trail or in the woods anywhere, and we're going to enforce it. And why not just clamp down on that? That to me, if cigarette butts is the primary concern, and again, you raised it number one, and I've heard it a lot, then why not simply say, we're not going to close the woods or the trails, but we're going to not allow anybody to smoke, and anybody caught and will get a hefty fine. What are your thoughts on that as an alternative?
Well, I think that would be wonderful, but I also think there's other things that put a fire at risk.
Well, sure.
Like I said, I'm not looking to argue with you.
No, I'm not arguing, but you
raised. It's your job to play devil's advocate, so that's fine.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree.
But would you agree, Carol, Carol, would you agree that you could deal with the smoking issue by simply telling people you're not allowed to smoke on trails or in the woods?
No, I don't think that would deal with it, because I don't think we have the enforcement to enforce it.
Well, do we have enforcement?
And without enforcement.
Yeah. Do we have
without enforcement?
Okay. How are we enforcing the travel ban then?
Well, I think we're enforcing it the same way. We're enforcing it the best we can with the personnel we have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. DNR has 4 helicopters and 1 helicopter pilot. Is that the public's fault? No. Should it have been corrected since Tantallon? Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, a lot of it's not the fault of the public, but we're in the shape we're in, and we have to act accordingly, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Carol. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, and again, I'm just trying to have as broad a conversation as we can. I've heard this repeatedly that cigarette butts are a major primary concern that people have. Well, that's the case, and then let's ban smoking in all wooded areas. And would that be hard to enforce? Well, is a travel ban hard to enforce? If you make it punitive enough, I suppose. And I don't know. Just a thought. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Facts.
Taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Look, I think it's pretty evident, folks, that when it comes to not having people on trails, on a bike or walking, not talking about motorized vehicles, put that aside, because that brings its own risk, but walking or biking on a trail and not having that, the idea of dropping a glass bottle somewhere, and that somehow magnifying and creating a fire, that is nonsensical in my opinion. That isn't even worth talking about. That's not going to happen. First of all, how many people have glass bottles out there? Almost nobody would do that, right? And anybody who does, generally, that's nonsense. So it all really comes down to thinking that people who are on trails and the danger comes from cigarettes. That is the accusation, right? Basically, how else would somebody in the woods on a trail start a fire? Aside from arson, but I mean, again, rule that out and an intentional. And we're talking with somebody just simply walking or biking on a trail. So it comes down to thinking that they're going to start a fire by cigarette smoke, by a cigarette butt. That's what it comes down to. Well, if that's the case, then let's say you're not allowed to smoke, period. Full stop enforcement. And encourage people, if they see people in the woods smoking or in trail smoking, to video them or whatever. I don't know. But it really comes down to cigarettes. That is the key issue here, in my opinion. And that all said, Claire says this via email. Then we'll go back to the phone. She says, I find it bizarre that so many callers put critical thinking aside and claim that my walking in the woods on an urban trail would cause a fire. I don't smoke. I can reassure everyone that I don't smoke, so why wouldn't I be able to walk unhindered on an urban trail? What are your callers preemptively accusing me of? What are they suspecting? Are they preemptively bullying me? Comes from Claire. 902-405-6000. Let's go to Jim. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good. I got 2 comments to make.
Okay.
I've been seeing people take their dogs in the woods outside where the barriers are up for the local parks here.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of driving in the city. So they're violating it just for the sake of walking their dog. It's not an issue, in my opinion, Scott, of cigarettes. When you do something in a big emergency like this situation, you can't cherry pick and start picking out for cigarette smokers or whatever. It's like in Europe sometimes they'll say don't go into the wooded areas because we still have some anti-personnel mines left over. People will still go in the woods just to see if they could find one. So when you do this type of stuff, you can't cherry pick. You just have to pick on where it's most likely to diminish the chances of having a major fire. Now, what bothers me the most about this right now with our high temperatures is you've got active, out-of-control fires in Newfoundland. You have active, out-of-control fires in New Brunswick. And to me, it's just a matter of time before we have an out-of-control fire in what I understand to be the most populated wooded area, second most populated wooded area province in Canada. So, I mean, the odds are against us that we're not going to have a major fire, but let's do what we can to diminish it. I have no empathy for anybody who goes in those woods breaking that law, no matter what. And I think the fine should be $50,000. Now, having said that, let's move on to my second comment. The Minister of Municipal Affairs rejecting the municipal plan, the strategy plan for the next 4 years. I heard some councillors on the radio saying that they were quite pleased with it. They were very happy. Patty Cuttle was one of them, my councillor. Very excited, but I think this is the litmus test that sends a signal to me that it's the setup for the perfect storm coming in September when the House goes back. It's quite clear now with that announcement by the minister. He's quite unhappy with the way the city is being run as far as the council goes. The mayor is trying to get some additional help to maybe reduce those type of situations. So I think it's just a matter of time before the province steps in and says enough is enough. And that last decision by him is probably the most outstanding thing I've seen, other than what the Premier has indicated he might do. I think it's quite clear that they are going to do something. What do you think? Well, yeah, I think it's stronger powers are coming. I'd bet every nickel I have on it. Yeah. But anyway, as far as the fire ban goes, you can't cherry pick and say this or that, a bicycle or guys just going for a walk. Just drive around Spryfield where you live and I live, and you'll see cars parked in parking lots that are in the parking lot where there is a ban to not go any further. So if I was on patrol in my old profession, I'd be taking that license plate number. I'd probably go get a Tim Hortons coffee if I had the time, park there, wait for the individuals to come out of the woods and say, what are you doing in the woods? Oh, I was just having a smoke. Yeah. I mean, come on, you can't cherry pick it. It's done right. You prohibit as much as you can within reason, knowing full well that somebody is going to violate that. Well, it's too bad, Jim, that basically the blame falls on smokers then, right? That's where we're at. No, not at all. Well, I haven't heard anybody say that it's those major fires are caused by smokers. I haven't heard that. And I got relatives in Newfoundland. I watch the news. I haven't heard anybody say that fires are definitely all these major fires are caused by smokers. Well, we've had multiple, Jim. We've had multiple callers. Jim. We've had multiple callers over the last week say that the same thing: that cigarette butts. Multiple. Saying that? Yeah, but who's saying that? I don't know people's names, Jim. We've had a lot to call. You haven't heard callers say that? Todd, I'm not looking for names. I'm looking for what are they saying about the cigarettes when they call you. Well, haven't you heard any of them? We just had a caller just on say that we have to close trails because smokers are irresponsible in the woods. That's basically what that is. Well, do you think it's responsible to violate a ban and light up a cigar or a cigarette and then flick the burning ashes in the woods? No, cigarette in the woods? No, I don't, Jim. But what I'm saying is that first of all, the accusation is that all smokers or smokers in general are irresponsible people who don't care and are reckless with cigarettes. Okay, all right. So let's settle this right now. Yeah. Is that accusation being made by Mr. Tingley, in charge of the forestry, or whatever his title is? Has he come out and said that, hey, listen, we got a ban, but I'm going to also remind you that smokers are causing a lot of the fires? Did he ever say that? Well, why else would people not be allowed to walk or ride a bike on a trail? Would he ever? No, but Jim, why? He's in charge of all this. If anybody's going to give us information that it's cigarette smoking causing fires, it's going to be that guy, and he hasn't said it. Okay. Some of your callers are saying it. So why else would you close trails for walking and biking? What else? How else does a person start a fire biking or walking on a trail if it's not by cigarette butt? Okay. How else? You have to start from stage one. It's called woods, and it's called balsam fir. You ever see a balsam fir explode on a fire?
Okay, Jim, you're walking on a trail. Okay, we're talking about a trail.
Supposed to be, though.
Okay,
you're
but
not supposed to be in the woods.
Jim, listen to what I'm saying. How else do you start a fire if you're walking on a trail if it's not by a cigarette butt or a lighter? How else do you do it?
What do you mean, how else you do? You could do it by a fire. Yeah, sure, you could do it by a cigarette. You could stop and light it and make a fire and get warm or whatever. You can come up with all kinds of situations. The fact is, there are multiple reasons why there's fires in woods. You put a ban so you don't cherry pick that and get into all these ridiculous conversations about who flicks a butt or shouldn't flick a butt.
It's not ridiculous, Jim. I'm talking about simply trails, okay? We're talking about the urban trails here in many cases in which this ban has been applied.
Like a trail, like give me an example of a trail. A Long Lake,
Long Lake's a great example. It's really wide. It's all gravel, and so how is anybody going to start a fire walking around that trail unless they either A, intentionally start it, or B, ignite something like a cigarette?
It's very simple, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
You won't have a fire if you keep them out of the woods. Period.
Oh, well, so your answer is it's got to be a smoker. Really, there's no other way.
It could be a smoker and chewing gum. I don't care. People start fires.
No, you don't start a fire by chewing gum, Jim. That's ridiculous.
Some people start fires as well as lightning, as well as other.
How do you start a fire on a trail without a lighter or without a cigarette butt? How?
Human beings start fires.
How, Jim? How do you start a fire without a cigarette butt or lighter on a trail? How?
You're focusing too much on somebody smoking. I don't know why. I'm talking about them in the woods, period.
No,
which is the ban.
You're not listening to what I'm saying.
Keep human beings out of the woods. That's the idea. When you have an emergency with fires in Newfoundland, fires in New Brunswick,
right.
And we have all those other volunteers over there, who's going to come and help us when they're tied up on theirs? Fires can be caused by human beings. If you want to pick on cigarettes and say, well, they can't cause a fire.
I didn't say they can't cause a fire, Jim. I'm saying it's the only way you can start a fire in the woods if you're on a trail.
Okay. All right, here's my question for you with the way you're putting your argument forth.
Yeah.
Do you agree with people should not be in the woods on this ban?
I don't agree that people shouldn't be banned from walking or biking on trails. No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, then we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah,
How about that?
All right.
How's that go?
All right, thanks for the call.
Buddy.
All right,
Bye-bye.
902-405-6000. Listen, folks, it's to me, it's absolutely no fire ban, no recreational vehicles, absolutely not. But if you're, we're talking about a trail. And you could cherry pick which trail, a wide trail like Long Lake Provincial Park. What's the only way you're going to start a fire if you're walking on the middle of a trail is with a cigarette butt or a lighter? That's it. I don't know any other way. How else can you start a fire? So ban smoking on all provincial trails. Done. And you're not allowed to go in the woods unless you're on a designated provincial trail. And you could even pick the ones that you want them to do that are the safest. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. If you eliminate it, or rather, first off, when it comes to the ban in the woods, I agree with every aspect of it except for being allowed to walk or on trails. And you could even have designated trails because some trails are smaller and more narrow and perhaps a little more, I don't know, whatever. But they're certainly, and I keep using Long Lake as an example because it's very wide. It's all gravel. The trail is a very wide trail. So if the concern is that people walking those trails may inherently may be a smoker, if that's the concern, well, then I guess you could. Why not ban smoking entirely when it comes to being on a trail? Say that you're not allowed to smoke. Period. And you could say, well, smokers don't care. Well, it's a shame that smokers are creating this type of issue for the rest of us. If that's where the fault lies, is with smokers. But clearly, I don't see any other way you're going to start a fire on a trail than if you're a cigarette butt flicker. Outside, of course, of arson, intentionally starting a fire. To me, that's logical. 902-405-6000. Daryl's the first-time caller. Hello, Daryl.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good. Love the show.
Thank you.
Listen, I just want to point out, people, I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't smoke anymore. My dog needs to be walked. Whatever. If I got to walk him on the sidewalk, walk him on the sidewalk. But look, I drove down Quinpool today, and there's an encampment just off of Quinpool in the woods, and there was smoke. I called it in. I said, look, either someone's barbecuing or someone has a little fire going. I have nothing against the people have it rough. I had it rough once upon a time in my life, but nobody wants to say anything about the encampments in the woods, or they had a written response to my question when I asked if anybody was checking up on the encampments regarding, are they having fires? Are they being cautious? And they had a written response about what they're doing with the homeless. Okay, I get what they're doing with the homeless, but we're in a serious fire ban here, and we still have people living in the woods. Old Sackville Drive and a park off of there's people living in there. Are they being cautious? Is someone with possibly mental health or addictions issues gonna be careful around smoking or fires or barbecuing in the woods? Like, is anything being done regarding that, as opposed to me walking my dog on an 8-foot gravel path along a river?
It's a valid point. And forestry operations are ongoing, still in the woods, right?
Yeah. But the fact that I had to call 2 numbers, and the response they gave me was a written response of HRM and the province's plan to help the homeless. So that's not what I was just simply calling to let them know that I saw smoke when I drove past there in the morning. I drive past there every day, and they didn't seem overly concerned. And I questioned, well, why? Is it because it's a touchy subject? Is it, well, we can't say anything because of the homeless issue? Well, no, if it's everybody, it should be everybody. It's taking a responsibility. Why aren't we taking them out of there? And there are spots available in as far as places for people that need a place to stay. There are still spots available. They're not all full, and so they're choosing to be in those woods. But why aren't we, and they didn't even have an answer as to if anyone was checking up on them or anything. That's a pretty woodsy little area there, and wouldn't take much.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I take your point, Daryl. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Marilyn, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
You had a firefighter on there last week, and he made a comment that a fire can be started very simple. If someone were to leave a bag with water in it, it will reflect and it could start a fire. So if somebody's going in the woods, and maybe just a nice little day with the kids, having a little picnic, and had Ziploc bags, and maybe one had ice in it, and mistakenly left it behind, because nobody does this on purpose. And it just happened to get the sun hit it, made a magnifying glass, and everything's so dry that it starts a fire. So I don't think it's just because people smoke and they throw their butts. I'm sure most smokers are very well aware of it, and they try to be cautious. But simple little things, even like your sandwich might have been wrapped up in a piece of tinfoil. And when you cleaned up your mess, maybe the wind blew the tinfoil and you didn't see it. So there's a lot of things that could start a fire in the woods. And this came from a firefighter who was on your show. And I thought he made some really good points. And I also wanted to say, like, I was born in the 70s. So in the 80s, we had extreme highs. Our weather now, I don't think is nothing like it was in the 80s. I can remember being so hot that we couldn't even sleep at night. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Marilyn, look, I again, I can't help but think that the amount of times that fires have started because of somebody had a bag with water in it. Like I don't know what you're I don't even really kind of understand your scenario. That would be so improbable that I would bet that it's never happened, quite honestly.
Well, you did have a firefighter say it is something that does happen, so that's not something, in my opinion. And you were asking, how can somebody start a fire? Yeah. And fires do happen that way. Even like if you had a glass table that was just sheer glass on top, I've heard about people's decks burning down where the sun shining through the glass table caught their deck on fire.
I've never heard of that in my life. Yeah.
I've actually heard of it this weekend that somebody was at a party and it happened. Yeah. So these things happen. Just because you haven't heard it or I haven't heard it doesn't mean it's not true. And a firefighter who was on your show saying that, I would think he has some knowledge and he might know a little more than I do or you do.
Yeah. I think when it comes to camping, I don't think camping should be allowed in the woods for sure. I agree with that 100%. But I'm talking about people who are going in and let's say the municipality of Halifax. Okay, you've got trails that connect, and not long trails, and not heavily wooded areas, but just kind of wooded areas. Trails that connect Clayton Park with the other part of a, and people riding their bike, and in some cases they're paved or walking down that trail. The chances of them starting a fire would be. I don't know what the percent would be, Marilyn, but it would have to be almost zero unless they were intentionally doing it.
Absolutely, but they have to start somewhere. Not everybody's going to listen. And if you ever had a child, when you take your kid for a walk, you have your water, you have little bags of snacks, probably even a little bag with ice in it, and you're digging through your bag. I'm actually watching people walking in front of me right now because I'm pulling the side of the road with their bag of goodies, with their kids, and you're digging through your bag, and something could easily fall out, something like a piece of tin foil, or even your little baggie with the water. You don't see it. I mean, they got to start somewhere. And I think it's okay if we just all take a little responsibility and just step back and, we don't have to walk in the woods. Maybe go walk along the beach. Like, it's okay to change your daily routine, and maybe you'll find something you like better.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Bill.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad. A couple things. Number one, that's good that the Premier stepped in there because that was getting carried away, especially Morris Street. What you got a fight on there. There's two different factions there in the city, and they're not getting along. And that's the only thing that could happen was to bring the Premier into it. So that's going to hopefully straighten some of it out. The other thing about the fires, that's kind of interesting, especially with that lady bringing up about the 500-year-old tree. That's almost, to me, like a symbol of trying to save something. Just don't clear-cut everything that's standing up. I think that should be a bit of a symbol to try to save that tree. I mean, if you go cut down 50 feet away from it, it's certainly not going to, it's going to be a big difference. So my attitude is, first of all, the other thing, too, this clear-cutting, I don't know if that's a good idea because you got all these trees laying down the ground, dying off, getting dried out, easy to start fires to them. If they're going to do any of this clear cutting, I'd say leave every so far here and there. Leave some of these big trees that have come 400 or 500 years old. Leave them stand. They're not going to hurt them to by themselves. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Sure, Bill. I get it. I think you make some good points as always, pal. Thanks for the call, bud.
Thanks.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. Billy Gillis is giving us a call. He's, of course, HRM counselor. Billy, what motivated you to call us today?
How you doing, Todd? I was just listening to the radio there, and I just wanted to respond to the caller about Little William Henry Park in Sackville and just his concerns that if anybody's checking on it and stuff like that. I actually check on this park personally twice a day myself, just for signs of growth and just to make sure things aren't getting out of control there. There is 3 tents that are currently there, and it is in a heavily wooded area. So there's a lot of residents. I'm getting a lot of calls, a lot of emails about the concerns, what's going on there. Everybody has been notified. Everybody, DNR, the RCMP here in Lower Saxo, the Housing and Homeless Department, everybody is well aware on the folks that are there. And the reason why we can't move them is because there is no space available in the provincial shelter. So a lot of people think that there's just space anywhere. So we cannot move them until there is space available. So, we've had probably 20 people in there throughout the winter, and over time managed to get them moved out of the woods into shelters when space is available. But right now there is currently zero space available. That's why they're still there.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for sure, eh?
Yeah. So, I just want to call, just to respond, just to let everybody know that we are looking after it. We are doing everything possible. We're checking for signs of fires. There has been fires there in the last week. There was fires there last weekend, despite the fire ban and stuff. So it is an active, fluid situation, and we just got to stay on top of it.
Okay, Bill. Thanks for the call, pal.
Okay, thanks,
all right,
Todd.
take care. 902-456-6000. Shane, hello.
Hey, Todd. What a friggin' show, bud. Great job, man.
Thank you.
Holy jumping. You guys and the team at 95.7 deserve some kind of whatever journalistic award is out there. You guys got it. Anyway, just when people don't have a valid argument, they resort to stereotyping and insults and the like. Not all smokers are careless and irresponsible. I'm a 40-plus year avid outdoorsman and conservationist, and I smoke, but I don't throw my butts in the woods. I don't carelessly throw my butts out the window in the car. I dispose of them properly in liquid. So I'm just really tired of how seeing stereotype is so friggin' accepted. What if I were to do that to a certain group of individuals that live certain life? I bet you I'd be cast out pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. Smokers are second-class citizens in this society, I would say, Shane, for sure. I agree with that.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. And you know what? I totally agree with the fire ban. No fires in the woods. But my God, the lady there talking about the bag of water being left in the woods. Well, what about the reflection off the sun, off the water itself? Like, come on, people. This is what happens when government pushes fear.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, buddy.
Okay, Shane. Thanks for the call.
Great show, man.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Ken, hello.
Hi, Todd. Oh, congratulations for your last caller there for putting out all your cigarettes. And I smoked for over 40 years. But that's not to say that everybody is responsible smoker. So you can throw that right out the window. But anyway, Todd, can you name me one person or one breed of dog that's going to die tomorrow if they don't go for a walk on the trail?
No, I can't.
So it's not a matter of life or death. Their house is not going to be gone. Their car is not going to be gone, or their garage or whatever. If they go for a walk on the trail, they come back, right?
Yep, that's right.
So, I mean, why? Okay, I'll put it to you this way. One of your sponsors is what's the ones for drinking and driving?
Mad Canada?
Mad Canada, okay? Mad Canada does not go on the radio and say, if you stop drinking, you will not have a head-on collision when you're out driving. What does them advocating for not drinking and driving do? It reduces the risk.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Cape Breton the other day, there was a fire started from a guy mowing his grass and he hit a rock.
Mm-hmm.
A spark from the blade. Now you say you want bikes. Oh, well, let's put them electric scooters on the trailer. They never catch fire, right?
I didn't say electric scooters. I didn't say electric scooters.
Bike.
Okay, bikes, that's right.
Bike. So
bicycles,
that's bike.
yeah.
So now you're going to cherry pick again.
No, I'm not going to cherry pick because even if you had a bicycle, electric bike, I mean, Ken, listen, I get you. So your point is what? Your point is that you should make your point.
You're like, okay, when Rick Howe was in there, his legacy is the bicycle lanes. If Nova Scotia goes up in flames, that'll be your legacy, Todd, because you're advocating for people to go out in the woods or whatever.
No, I'm not advocating for. I'm not. No, Ken, I'm not at all. I'm saying the trails like along Lake Provincial Park, or trails within the municipality themselves that connect communities that are in some case paved, that by prohibiting people till August 15th from using those, I think has that has an impact on people's lives. Sure, it does. Has impact on people's mental health. It has people's impact on people's physical health. Sure, it does. Absolutely, it does. Ken, 100% it does.
Oh, there's nowhere else you can go for a walk besides on a trail.
Well,
like,
sure there are, but how many people don't walk because they can't walk on those trails? Probably a lot. I would say a lot of people. You laugh. It's true, Ken. A lot of people would not walk on the sidewalks because they would prefer to walk on a trail. Absolutely, 100%.
As far as you're saying, oh well, let them go on the trails and tell them not to smoke. Okay, how many people do you think are going to get out of their car, light up a cigarette, and then walk to the trail? No, of course not. They're going to walk halfway into the trail, and then they're going to light up their cigarette. Unless you're that dummy like from the news last night.
So smokers can't be. So what you're saying is smokers can't be trusted. That's what you're saying, right?
Most can, yes. Probably 95% can. But what I'm saying, Todd, is reduce the risk.
Yeah.
Do you want to be like Newfoundland, or you want to be like New Brunswick?
No, of course not.
Then why even risk it for a couple of days? You know, it may be a week, it may be a month before we get some rain. You're not going to die if you don't get on a trail.
Okay, Ken. Appreciate the call, pal.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We left a lot of you on hold. I apologize for that. Look. By the way, and so people don't misquote me, I say that I support absolutely every single move except for the full stop banning of people from walking or biking on municipal or provincial trails because of the reasons why I mentioned. And that is so people don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Absolutely no, should have no ATVs. Absolutely not. Should not allow fires. But again, there's a lot of mixed messaging here because people said we get people living in the woods, homeless people living in the woods, and nothing is being done about that for a variety of reasons. And there's also commercial enterprises going on. Industry is working in the woods as we speak, or at least in the nighttime. And to what degree, we don't know. So there's a lot of mixed messaging here, and I would say some hypocrisy here as well. And the idea that smokers are all simply going to be irresponsible and reckless in the woods, well, certainly a percent will be, yes. A percent will be. That's true. But that said, do we shut down a trail system until potentially October 15th because of that? Well, that's my debate. That's where it all comes down to, is that. As I said when we started the program, the open hour, it comes down to smokers. That is the primary concern that people have, and they don't trust smokers to be responsible in the woods. That is what it comes down to. That, to me, is what the whole thing is about. The Science Files with Rob Thacker when we come back. All right, it's time for the Science Files with Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University astrophysicist, and Rob Thacker was away last week, so we missed you, Rob Thacker, and welcome back.
Well, I missed everyone as well.
We missed the. All right, I don't think your mic was on. Go ahead, Rob. Say that again, please.
I missed everyone as well, yeah. So I can hear myself.
There you go. So our kind of philosophy that on nice weather days and sunny weather days we don't get a lot of calls. We kind of broke that trend a couple of times.
We have.
Yeah.
And so I think today is really interesting though because it's so warm.
Yeah, people might be inside.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they can't be outside in the woods.
Sure. Oh, are we going to get calls about that?
No, we'll leave that alone.
What's your opinion on that?
That's right. We'll leave that alone. Anyway, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. But there is a science-related element to that, and that is probability, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And your kind of core argument is that if you eliminate certain probability, then that the risk inherently goes down, right?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, so there's been a huge sort of debate in the media, for that matter, about what causes or starts fires, right? And so there's this feeling that a lot of it is arson. Arson is in there, but most of the time it's literally people just being out, doing something. Like it can be like, I don't know, I don't want to pick on any one particular group, but an ATV, for example. Those can start fires. And so where there are humans in drought situations with fire risk, there's inevitably a higher risk of a fire starting, whether deliberate or not. That's the whole point, right? Yeah. And so if you remove the people from the area, you obviously lower the probability of something like that happen. Now, you could still have a lightning strike start fires here, right? You can still have that. You can't get rid of that. And so when you have fires start where there aren't any people, then you know that's caused by lightning.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, 902-405-6000. And by the way, just again, for people who tuned in and weren't sure, I absolutely agree. You should not be traveling in the woods in a vehicle, because that is very risky in my opinion. Anyway, I just wanted to offer that disclosure, the disclaimer, I guess.
Okay.
902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for the Science Files with Rob Thacker. And Loretta's giving us a call. Hello, Loretta.
Hi, good afternoon. Dr. Thacker, I have a question. My neighbor, I live in an apartment building. My neighbor, who lives right next to me, so on the same wall of the apartment building, we're on the same floor and everything.
Yeah.
And it's regarding, like, when the evening comes and the temperatures start dropping, my neighbor and I, we have a little debate going on whether it's wiser to put a fan in the window and push the hot air out of your apartment, or put the fan and suck the cool air from outside in. Now we're assuming that there's no air, no breeze, or the same amount of breeze and humidity. Which would be the smarter thing to do?
So here's at the end of the day, right? The air pressure is going to equalize. So if you are blowing stuff out, then stuff is going to come in. So I think the main difference in those two scenarios is, as the air comes in, how is it coming in, right? And that's the key thing. So if it comes in without being heated, like literally if you're sucking it in with a fan, that's probably about the best way you can do that. Then that air that you're sucking in is going to be relatively cool. Whereas if it comes in slowly through the building envelope, then it's going to be heated by the thermal mass of the building envelope. So I think you literally want to get the fastest way to get the cooler air in that you can. That's the way I would try and do it.
Yeah, like we have a living room window, we have a bedroom window, and we have a patio door window. So we both have the same amount of windows. Yep. He suggests it's wiser to push the hot air out. I think it's wiser to suck the cool air in.
Like,
and you're saying...
So here's the thing that is going to help. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you equalize the pressure. So the air that's going out is equalized by air coming back, right? What you can do to improve the effectiveness of that is to make sure that there is a separation between the air that's going out versus the air that's coming in. So having like a plate or something like that to separate the flow, that would be really helpful, right? Because if you don't have that, like anyone who's had a vent go through, say, like a window mesh or something like that, they'll know that situation is not optimal because everything gets mixed around. Whereas if you can make it go straight out and then you have something where things can come straight in, that is going to be the best kind of airflow you can get. That's literally what HRVs do in modern house designs.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for the Science Files with Rob Thacker. Frank, hello.
Good morning. I have a question and an observation for Rob.
Sure.
Mike, I'll let him think about the question while I'm making my observation. So my question would be, what's Rob's best guess as to when we might see people walking on the moon again?
Mm-hmm.
Keep getting further and further away. But my observation was, in light of Jim Lovell dying the last 2 days, he was the Apollo 13 commander who famously coined the phrase, "Houston, we have a problem," and played by Tom Hanks in that movie. It made me wonder how many moonwalkers we still have alive. There was 12 people walked on the moon, And so I looked it up. There's still 4 of them alive. They're all ranged from age 90 to 95.
Yep.
And it occurred to me, my observation is it could very well be that we don't have any moonwalkers still alive by the time we have another person walk on the moon. That would, so it's not been more than a generation. It's been pretty much a lifetime since we've had somebody walk on the moon. So based on that realization, I'm wondering, read the tea leaves and all the information, knowledge you have about manned spaceflight, what would be your best guess as to when we, and with a margin of error, of course, what's your best guess on when?
Sure. So I think what we're seeing is a real shift in perspectives on the moon. So NASA had kind of a view that the moon was a useful stepping stone. And so going down to the moon in terms of learning about literally living in low gravity environments was a sensible thing to go and do. As well as that, the lunar regolith is not a nice material. It gets into everything and so on. And so learning about how to deal with that would have been an engineering problem. And people were interested in working on that. Now there's kind of a shift that the Space Launch System is not an effective rocket. It's debatable, probably an element of truth to that. It's very old generation rocketry to some degree. And they're looking to Starship. Right, so Elon Musk's vehicle, which is a significant change and a very, very different way of going to the moon, right? So what's not clear about that, and this is the thing that's kind of holding up a lot of issues around going back to the moon with Starship, is how many refueling trips it's going to take to actually refuel the rocket in orbit, and then the actual design of the lunar lander itself, right? So there's a lot of ifs and ands there for SpaceX to figure out. I think that's definitely where most people are focused now in terms of what a return to the moon would look like and how that would be. But there's so many question marks about how all of that goes forward. It's actually quite difficult to know what's going to happen. To credit to SpaceX, they do tend to sort of like prototype very quickly and get through engineering problems very quickly. But at the same time, they've been going at Starship for quite a while now, and it's a much bigger rocket than Falcon 9, and there's a lot more problems to work through. So my guess is, maybe 2030, something like that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There may not be one of the moonwalkers left alive when that happens.
Well, 2030, I can wait for it. I was 14 when we first landed on the moon, and of course, at that time, 14, you want to be an astronaut. Now I'm 70 years old, although I still want to be an astronaut.
You can still be an astronaut at 70 years old.
I would still, it'd be nice to see somebody walking on the moon again in my lifetime. Yeah. So let's hope. And Mr. Musk, he wants to go directly to Mars. He doesn't seem to want to go to the moon.
Yeah, no, I mean,
the moon is a good place to learn how to live.
There is a sort of like interesting energy equation that's happening there. And in fact, the actual amount of energy you need to get to Mars is not that much more energy than you need to get to the moon, right? And a lot of people don't understand that because they're like, well, one's a lot further away than the other. And it's literally like once you fire off out of the Earth's gravitational pull and go off to Mars, you don't have to fire the rockets anymore. You just coast, right? And so that's why actually going to the moon with Starship it's not a really great design for that. But you can put 100 tons on the moon, which would be like 50 times more than we've ever done before, which is a significant difference.
And one more quick question: Who's it on the moon lander?
Sorry, say again.
Who's technology? What company is?
Well, at the moment, it's SpaceX, although Blue Origin is arguing with NASA about developing their own version of the lunar lander. They were up for the main contract a few years ago. I can't remember all of the details on that, of whether they're getting money to develop something, but they do have a design that's a little bit more like what we all remember from Apollo.
Right. So,
but at the moment, it's really SpaceX.
Is to land the Musk machine, the Starship, to land that Starship on the moon. That's the latest. That's the existing plan.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, we've never landed 100 tons on the moon, so that's a whole different ball game from a couple of tons.
And try to lift it off again.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Frank.
No problem.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000, Science Files with Rob Thacker. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
Right, the Science Files with Rob Thacker continues. 902-405-6000. Angela's giving us a call. Hello, Angela.
Hi, how are you?
Well, you?
Good. I was wondering, how far out of the city do you have to be in order to see the meteor shower that's coming up this week?
The good news is the light dome out of Halifax isn't too bad if you go sort of towards Chebucto Head and around there. That's actually a fairly good place. There's not too much light pollution down there. So literally like 15-minute drive out from the edges of the city, you're fine, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. But go in that direction. Don't go sort of like up north. If you go south, then it gets really good. And if you want to have like a really good place to go, actually, is Peggy's Cove. Peggy's Cove is really good.
Really? Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for the information.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Okay,
Bye.
902-405-6000. Monica, hello.
Oh, good morning. What I'm wondering with the drought that's happening right now, if we know that there's a certain amount of water within the overall Earth, and we're dry, Quebec's dry, Ontario's dry, where is all that extra moisture, and is there a way to get it back here?
That's sorry, I'm laughing because I was literally talking to people about what things are like out west right now. And so I was just in Edmonton visiting family, and Edmonton is the greenest I have ever seen in August in my entire life. It is absolutely mind-boggling to see Edmonton be so green. It's like spring there right now. And so there's been an awful lot of rain in certain parts of the West, right? And now how could we then get that water where it's needed? And the answer is that's incredibly hard, right? And so if you look at what they've done in the States with certain redirections of rivers and so on, they've done that to provide water to places that don't typically have it. So there's water diversions that were built many decades ago for Los Angeles and things like that. But that kind of thing is limited in distance, and you've got to have a water flow with enough head to be able to move the water where you need it, right? And that's really just moving flows that already exist rather than sudden changes in precipitation from one place to another. So I would say generally it's actually incredibly difficult because you don't know a priori where the place that got the additional water will be compared to the place that's dry, and that's what makes it difficult to build infrastructure to handle that.
And just as a follow-up, I don't know if I have this idea from a science fiction book or if it actually happened, but this idea that you can do something to create clouds and make it rain.
Right. Yeah. So there is something called cloud seeding, but the thing that, and we've discussed cloud seeding a little bit, the thing that you have to remember about cloud seeding is the actual state of the atmosphere has to be such that the cloud is actually very saturated with water and is right on the edge of going, right? Because all of the seeding actually does is put what we call nucleation points into the cloud to actually get the water to start precipitating out, right? If it's not ready to go, if it's really sort of like not at that point of being ready to precipitate out in rain, then seeding it won't make any difference. It's actually only something that works effectively when you already have a fair amount of moisture in the air.
Okay, but not just if we had high humidity. There actually has to be clouds.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I thought I was trying to solve everything, but obviously
it's a tough problem. It really is. It's very difficult to move large volumes of water other than when you know you have a head for a river or something like that and you can redirect it.
Even that, we're seeing, the lowest water levels for lakes and ponds and stuff. Anyway, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care. Okay, 902-405-6000. Here's an email question from Paul. Says, why does the moon not spin like Earth one rotation a day? We only see one side of the moon.
Okay, that's a great question. And so we actually have spent many years figuring that out. And it's cool because the moon is in what's called a tidally locked situation. And that happens because the Earth literally distorts the shape of the moon, and that will actually slow down the rotation of the moon over hundreds of millions of years to the point where it will actually be locked so that one side of it is facing the Earth, right? And that's happened over the past few billion years. And so the process of understanding that is a neat little problem, but it's called tidal locking. And it's literally just as you distort the moon, then it will naturally feel a drag from that distortion and it will slow down over time and eventually be locked facing us.
Interesting. There's another email question about the moon. It says, why couldn't SpaceX use technology like NASA used in the 60s?
So there's a lot of ifs and ands there. So what SpaceX is trying to do is to build a rocket that's designed for taking large payloads to Mars, right? And so because of that, they are much more invested in making Starship a general purpose vehicle than rebuilding something like the Apollo lander, which is what Blue Origin has proposed. So I think because they are invested in one particular platform, they want to be able to show that they can change that platform for different missions and so on. And that's literally why they're doing it. Personally, I don't think it's a particularly good design for going to the moon. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the sort of imagery of it, anyone who remembers good old Tintin novels and the Tintin novel with the rocket on the moon, it kind of looks like that, right? It's this massive, really tall rocket. And you're looking at landing something that weighs 100 tons, that's very tall. It needs to go down on very stable Earth. And I don't understand enough about lunar geology to know what the risks are there.
Interesting. Okay, give us a call, folks. We get this Rob Thacker for another half hour. It's the Science Files. We'll get some room for you as well. 902-405-6000. Again, if you'd like to chat with Rob, 902-405-6000. Science Files continues when we come back.
Axe.
All right, this is Science Files with Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University, astrophysicist. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Bernard has given us a buzz. Hello, Bernard.
Hello.
Hi there.
Excuse me. My question for the doctor, and it's related to this long period of dry weather we're having here in Nova Scotia. I have heard a number of people comment on the radio recently that things like a piece of glass, a scrap of tinfoil in the woods, a cell phone battery could cause a wildfire. How likely do you think it would be that a scrap of tinfoil in the woods, or I even heard a bag of water, light concentrating through a bag of water would ignite?
It's a bag of water acting like a magnifying lens, I think it was, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, here's the thing, right? This is why probability is such a freaky thing, right? On an individual basis, I say, yeah, sure. If it was just one piece of foil, piece of glass, whatever, that was concentrating the sunlight and so on, then the probability is very, very low, right? But the issue then becomes, if you have enough of these things happening, then you have non-zero probabilities, basically. And that is the key thing, right? And so I tend to kind of agree with the thrust of the logic, I think, behind your sort of like question, which is like really how likely are people to accidentally put these materials in that situation. I think those are fairly low, but it's like these things have happened. And I think the other problem is we have to remember that accidents do happen. Like, I mean, we've seen serious fires started completely by accident, right? And that's the problem. Like, where there's humans, unfortunately, there's fires.
Yes, of course. I happened by just yesterday on a bicycle ride towards Halls Harbor, a field and a bunch of surrounding woods that had been burnt out. It looked to me like there was a combine in the field and it was totally destroyed by the fire. It looked like to me that the machinery probably started the fire. And to my way of thinking, machinery or motor vehicles or those sorts of things are the most likely.
I'm actually going to agree with you on that. And Todd and I were talking about this exact point, right? That if you ban people from the woods, but then you've got basically mechanized machinery going through there as well, then you're making a decision that the business is more important than people's rights to be able to be out on Crown land.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. And so you can justify that from a policy perspective if you want, but I think you've got to say that and make that clear to people.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for your insight on the, possibility of starting a fire by a bag of water or a piece of glass or whatever.
Okay, Bernard. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Gary, hello.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Good, thanks.
Thanks for taking my call. I've got a question for the doctor. I've been looking at the exoplanetary systems and stars like that, and I don't know, maybe it's just a bias of mine, but it seems that a lot of these stars that are, or planets that are supposedly within the habitable zone of their star, for some reason they're often red giants for some reason. And I was wondering, wouldn't that be like a dangerous real estate for a planet to survive in? Because red giant stars are like unstable, and there's temperature variations and expansion. I was thinking it would be a real dangerous neighborhood to be in.
Are you sure you don't mean red
any
dwarfs?
Chance of life starting on a planet that close to the star or whatever.
Okay, so I mean, I know, like, the problem with red giants is they're very active, so it's difficult to sort of like pin down the actual motions of red giants. But red dwarfs, yes, we have a lot of planets going around red dwarfs. In fact, the most complicated system we know of is a planetary system around a red dwarf. So I think you may actually mean red dwarf systems.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the thing: like, even red dwarf systems can actually have kind of violent stellar flares. And so there was a paper in the literature probably a couple of years ago that pointed out the probability of particularly younger red dwarfs having really quite significant stellar flares that would impact planets around them was quite high. And so this is something that's, I think it's safe to say it's a bit undecided in the exoplanet community about how much of an impact this is going to have, because not every sort of star of the same type is going to have the same kind of flare probability and so on. That's going to be determined by the interior distribution of the magnetic field and so on and things like that. So it's actually quite a tricky situation to figure out precisely what the impact of this is going to be. So I tend to look at it from a different direction. And if you have a planet around a lower temperature system, like a red dwarf, or even for that matter, a red giant, that's a lower temperature system, then the type of radiation you get from those is lower temperature compared to the sun, and it has less complexity, and there's potentially less availability across different wavelengths to allow more types of life to evolve within that and use that energy in different ways. And so that particular quality of the radiation, for want of a better way of describing it, is something that, again, people are thinking about. And, we don't want to go too far and say, life isn't likely because of that. But it's certainly a less rich environment for life to grow up in, or life to evolve in.
Yes. And one other thing quickly, I've also noticed that a lot of times when they do find planetary systems around a star, often the gas giants are very close to the host star. And I was thinking, wouldn't heavier material, ferrous material and rock, get drawn closer to the star to form there first, and then the gas giants would be out far like ours are? Or are we just some kind of a funny, the order is funny for some reason?
Well, we could be funny. That's true. That's always a possibility. We might be an unusual solar system. But in general, there is a sort of non-zero probability. There's a reasonable chance that these particularly big gas giants may actually migrate. And so, as you've said, we found a lot of systems that are like that. There's a relatively well-developed way of understanding that from a theoretical perspective. So, yeah, it certainly does happen. There's reason to believe we had some kind of migration in our solar system as well, right? But not to the point where Jupiter came inside Mercury's orbit, obviously. But, that's kind of an expected thing to a certain extent to happen.
Right. Well, you've answered my questions today.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello.
Hey, guys. My question is about the tides. Just, I go swimming, and the low tides, you get two low tides a day, and it seems like the one that would be late overnight, early morning is always lower than the one in the middle of the day. Why is that?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. And I mean, remember that this can actually change depending upon where you are in terms of the frequency of the tides as well. But most coastal locations do get 2 tides and 2 low tides every day, as far as I know. So that's the more common thing to have. But in terms of like why there is one that's lower than the other, off the top of my head, I really don't know. I have to sit down and look at that. It's presumably related to the precise way that the tidal forces add up from the moon and the sun, right? That's my guess.
Yeah, it's year after year. Like every year is the same thing. But if you get a low tide at 5 o'clock in the morning, it'll be say 1.2 meters, and then if you got a low tide at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it would be 1.9 meters, and it's like that every year. Every summer, anyway. I just don't know if it could be changed in the wintertime, but I don't pay attention to the tides in the winter.
I'd literally have to do my research to give you an answer on that one. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Scott, hello.
Hi there. How you doing this morning, Todd?
Well, you?
Good, thank you. Listen, Rob, I just got a quick question for you, Doctor. I drive across the Confederation Bridge to PEI a fair amount.
Yeah.
And I've noticed on my car clock, when I enter the approaches to go on the bridge, my clock goes back an hour. I go across the bridge, and then when I get off the bridge on PEI, it reasserts itself back forward an hour.
So this is on your phone?
No, my car.
Oh, your car?
I have 2 clocks in my car. One's on the dash and one's on the radio or whatever.
Okay.
Both of them go back, go across the bridge, and they go forward an hour again. They readjust to normal time. And when you're coming the opposite direction, it does the same thing. This is my second car. I traded this car last year, and the new car does exactly the same thing, but it doesn't do it on my van. It just does it on my car.
What's your make of car?
It's a Lexus, and it doesn't do it on my phone, but my car, every single time I videotaped it, the whole 9 yards, right? Because people are like, no, it doesn't. Yeah, it does.
Well, okay. I honestly, I'm amazed to hear that, because I mean, one of the funny things about people's cars changing their clock is most cars don't actually interface to anything, so you have to do it manually, right? But if yours is doing this, then it's clearly getting timing information from somewhere. That would be a really interesting question to know the answer to, right?
Yeah, it blows me away. We see it every time, and we look at it and think, okay, here we go, getting ready for the time change.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is there's some weird GPS thing going on there, related to the height, but that doesn't make a lot of sense, if I'm honest.
Yeah, maybe, or we're going into another dimension that's going to be, they are a little different over there.
Yeah, no, that is truly a weird one. I don't really know why that would be, and it sounds really unusual because they've got to be getting that timing signal from somewhere. I mean, and I wonder where that's coming from.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure anyone else that drives a Lexus, I don't think it probably matters the model, but would experience the same thing. But it's a Toyota product, so maybe Toyotas do it too.
I mean, my guess is if you were going to do it, the only thing I think that you would use would be some kind of GPS information, right? And so that's all I can think of. But again, I don't know why that would cause that. And it's crazy that you say it's in this state when you're on the bridge, and as soon as you get off the other side, it goes back.
As soon as it gets off the other side, as soon as we don't actually touch ground on PEI, and it'll go back on the approaches. But I've got a little clock with the hour hand and the minute hand, and you can see it spin, right? And it'll spin forward.
So have you got anyone in your family who's really mischievous?
No. This is my second car, so I figured it was just an oddball with the first one, right?
Okay.
Third time it happens. It happens every time we go.
Yeah, so I'll leave that with you.
Okay.
Okay, Scott, take care. 902-405-6000. Barry, hello.
Hi, good day, folks. Just wondering if the professor could make a comment on desalination plants, because I know that Saudi Arabia and San Diego, California, have desalination, and if it's something feasible that we could look into in Nova Scotia.
I mean, okay, so I've got a long personal history of studying desalination plants, which is kind of funny. But so the main thing I want to point out with desalination plants is that they have environmental costs associated with them. right? And I think we perhaps tend to forget that. So they should always be, in my opinion, kind of like a last resort if you need fresh water. They're not great systems because you're literally concentrating brine and then putting that back out into an ocean, which is not great. Now, people argue, yeah, you can pipe it out far enough. Well, to a certain extent, that's true. But they do have negative environmental effects, and I think that's important. I mean, they take a lot of energy as well. I mean, there are sort of ways of using solar power to do this that work quite sensibly, I think, with desalination. But as a rule, I would say you're much better off managing your own watersheds carefully and sensibly than you are sort of like thinking that desalination is the way to go.
Well, thank you very much. Great show, gents. Thank you.
Okay, all right, take care. Yeah, it's funny because when we were in Vegas recently, the kind of attitude is that that'll be the savior. We'll figure it out. We'll pump in water from the Pacific. And I just think that, man, oh man, that seems to me to not be realistic.
No, it's not. And it's not good. I mean, there's a number of examples around the globe of where, like, the desalination has been brought in, and then there's all sorts of issues with the brine and so on. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, in my view, it's kind of like a last resort. If you're a desert country or something like that, what else are you going to do? Right? So, yeah, okay, I get it in that scenario. And people will say, look, I mean, we can talk about how we're actually going to release the brine and things like that. But, yeah, at the end of the day, if you're a province like Nova Scotia, where we actually do have a reasonable watershed that needs to be carefully managed and so on. And this, look, I mean, droughts are going to be a thing that we go through, and obviously, but desalination is not the answer. It's really not. So,
yeah. Okay, by the way, I received an email from Craig for the Lexus owner. It says it's a calibration issue with his info system. Easily reset at a dealer. It's bordering on a time zone setting. So there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, 902-405-6000. The Science Files continues when we come back.
Facts.
All right, a few moments left to the top of the hour. If you'd like to sneak in a question, we get some open lines for you with Rob Thacker. Science Files 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Quite a few questions and a lot of talk about the moon today. And one of the things that I wanted to get to, and I'll have an opportunity now. Again, if you'd like to get in a question, give us a call at 902-405-6000. But the Trump administration accelerating plans to place a nuclear reactor on the moon to power a base for humans. And you say that this is not new.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. The U.S. space exploration teams have been talking about nuclear reactors in space and on the moon especially since Apollo, right? So this is not news for anyone who's in the area to hear about this being talked about more seriously. So one of the challenges with the moon is it has a very long day and night, right? So like you've literally got a 28 days cycle. So you've got 14 days of basically lunar night that you've got to deal with in one way or another. And that tends to push people towards considering power situations that are constant, like nuclear power would be. You can argue, what about having big enough batteries? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, people go back to a technology like nuclear just because the fuel supply is like for the energy you get is obviously very small because it's very efficient and using up all that rest mass energy. So I'm not particularly surprised to hear this. Anyone who's been following the discussions about small modular reactors will know that these kind of even smaller reactors have been talked about in the context of being deployed in battlefields and things like that to provide power for troops and for a number of years too. So this is really kind of an extension of all of that idea. From an energy perspective, it's kind of reasonable, but from a legislative pollution perspective and things like that, this is kind of operating in a little bit of an uncertain world. There's an expectation with the Outer Space Treaty that you should be reasonable in terms of how you use resources and interact with other nations that potentially would be on those resources. So there's kind of an expectation that you should be somewhat environmentally focused in terms of what you do. But the whole situation with the moon is it's not, the Moon Treaty is something that not everyone signed on to, and in general, there's no United Nations agreement on sort of like how nuclear power should be handled in space. I mean, we've had nuclear power in space for a long time now. Radioisotope generators have been on spacecraft since the Voyagers in the 70s.
Okay, I think Vanessa might have one more caller on there, and I think she's going to lock him in. So we're going to get time to talk to Stephen as soon as she locks him in here. All right, lock him in, Steve or Vanessa. There you go, Stephen. Hello, quickly if you can, please.
As quick as I can. Two questions. One, desalination. Couldn't we take the byproduct of that and sell that as salt? And the other one is, did you not see the sun the first couple of days of this week that was had that weird orange hue around it?
Okay.
What's up with that?
So in terms of salt, all of that's going to come down to how you have to process it to make it sort of useful in whatever way you want to use it, whether that's as table salt, whether you want to use it as grit salt for the roads or whatever. So there's potentially going to be processing questions there, but it's not an unreasonable suggestion. And then in terms of the sun, ironically, I was away. I just got back, so I didn't actually see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It had this giant, it was like a giant orange thing in the morning.
Yeah, so whenever you have significant smoke in the atmosphere, that will change the color of the sun quite significantly because you get scattering of the sun's light. So I remember being out in Edmonton, Alberta, literally 2 years ago, and the sun in the middle of the day was just bright red orb. So orange is just a sort of like slightly lesser extent of that.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't smell any smoke or see anything.
Yeah, it's going to be really high up in the atmosphere. Yeah,
kind of like maybe a haze, but it was like 2 or 3 days in a row, and well, since Todd was here, Todd must have seen it.
All blurs together, Steve.
Yeah.
It all works together. Yeah, definitely.
All blurs together.
It's kind of like the Maple Leafs and the Yankees. Eh?
There you go, pal. Thanks for the call, Steve.
Thanks. Cheers.
Okay, Rob, you're away for a couple of weeks.
I am indeed.
You're heading to parts unknown, and
I'm going to be away. But thanks everyone for the great questions as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing it. Safe travels. That's Rob Thacker. That's the Science Files. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Esch. On the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. See you then.